talk you through the next 2 and a bit hours.
Thank you, Phil. Well, good evening, almost good night, or good morning, I should say rather, to you all at home. The temperature here in Beijing is rising fairly rapidly. Tiananmen Square, where this marathon starts, and if you were with us last week, you'll know that it's a pretty flat course, a little bit twisty-turny, taking in some of the sights of Beijing, which have become very familiar over the last couple of weeks. In fact, they go through Tiananmen Square twice. They come back through the square after about 10k and then wind their way through the city, and of course eventually end up back here in the stadium, which is being readied for tonight's closing ceremony. They're busy at work right in front of Brendan and I, and there's already quite a big crowd in here, which is, we think we said during the women's marathon, it's very good to see. Let's have a look at the map. So they turn right out of Tiananmen Square down towards the Temple of Heaven. That's about 5k. They turn back through the square, 10k, and then head down through the financial district, weaving their way towards eventually the universities. That's the halfway point there. And this is really where, if you remember, Konstantin Adita got away just about halfway and just kept going away from the rest of the field, and actually ran a pretty quick time, particularly the second half of the race, which is similar to that which I think we'll see in the men's race, finishing in the bird's nest there. Let's just pick out some names for you on the start list. Lee Troop, very experienced Australian. Dos Santos, former winner of the New York Marathon. We've already mentioned one or two names this morning in terms of favourites, but it's a very open race. Kifle from Eritrea, he could go well. 3 very experienced Spaniards, perhaps all 3 of them I would suggest past their best these days. Martinez, Ray, Dan Robinson, Holman, former European champion from Finland. Baldini, the defending champion. Osaki and Sato Ogato from Japan, great marathon running nation. We've mentioned the 3 Kenyans, Wanjiru, Kibet, Lel. Harib, the 2-time world champion. Goumri, who's been involved in 1 or 2 of those sprint finishes with Martin Lel in London, the Moroccan. Camille Maas, Dutch record holder. Henrik Ramala, another familiar name. Mubarak Hassan Shami as well from Qatar. One of those who could go very well here. Victor Rötlin, who took the bronze medal, the Swiss athlete who took the bronze medal, haven't really mentioned him yet this morning, will do. He took bronze at the World Championships, Ryan Hall and Dathan Ritzenheim, the Americans as well. Well, this marathon obviously brings to a close the athletics program. We finished in the stadium last night. These guys have had to wait a long time to get their chance on the Olympic stage. Quite a big field, just almost 100 athletes, 98 of them. We had 3 or 4 who were on the initial start list, haven't registered this morning, and there was thought that Baldini might not make it. He had an MRI scan during the week on the stress fracture that Brendan talked about, the defending champion. I was talking to an Italian journalist yesterday who said, well, he's going to run, but we're not expecting too much. But he's a redoubtable competitor, but his preparation severely hampered, very similar to the preparation which befell Paula Radcliffe. There he is. So here we go then, the men's Olympic marathon. Athletes being called to the start line. Some of these athletes will have got up at 3:30, 4 o'clock this morning. Not too many people to set them on the way in Tiananmen Square, but I'm sure the crowds will gather through the streets over the next couple of hours or so. That's Martin Lel, sorry. Just a little bit more nonchalantly approaching the start line. 1 or 2 of the others were keen to get there. Away they go then. 98 men heading out over the 26.2 mile course. 100 years after the famous race in London, Ferrando Pietri, the Italian, who was helped across the line on that occasion. And the marathon distance, it took another few years before it was standardized as the distance that we run and are all so familiar with these days. But the Olympic history was really a marathon history. That was one of the most famous episodes, and since then there have been lots of famous winners, lots of great races, and I hope that we get one here in Beijing. And it's certainly, there are plenty of athletes in this race worthy of giving us a memorable performance. No Haile Gebrselassie, as we've mentioned. He quite a while ago decided that this wasn't going to figure in his plans. You have to say that, as Brendan was saying, he may well have got the weather right. It's certainly going to be warm. No problems in terms of the air quality. These games have been blessed with pretty good weather. It's been warm at times. It's been actually quite cool on occasion for August in Beijing. But certainly I think the women got the better of the conditions. The men, it's going to be a little warmer this morning. Brendan.
Classic sight there in the classic distance. 100 years since the distance was established back in London in 1908. They're leaving the Tiananmen Square now. The fountains in the background. The crowd's beginning to gather in the centre of Tiananmen Square. And we've got 26 miles, 385 yards, courtesy of that race starting in Windsor Castle and finishing at the White City Stadium. The leader, the former world half marathon champion, world half marathon record holder, Sami Wanjiru of Kenya. And you can see from the light and the shadows that the sun is beginning to shine. I'm looking overhead and it's clear blue skies, so the temperature will rise gradually as these athletes get more and more tired, so the conditions will worsen and worsen, and this is going to be a true test of endurance. They're going to be tested in every sense. There's some great athletes that test them physically in running the pace. There are also these conditions to overcome, and we were looking there at number 2. That's Shop of Liechtenstein, already allowing the more accomplished marathon runners to leave him behind after 3 minutes of running into a secondary group and the main group down the road.
I wonder if he was late. He's a 2:24 marathon man. Marcel Schopp from Liechtenstein already taking up a position at the rear of the field. Well, I think this is going to be a fairly cagey affair early on. It's interesting that Wanjiru has already gone well to the fore. You might have expected many of the big names to just have a nice easy run through the first few miles. Some people like to be running comfortably with a clear road in front of them, though Henrik Romala, it's never unusual to see him near the front. But that'll be a big group for a long time, I'm pretty sure. We mentioned last year the World Championships in Osaka really was very, very hot there, and we haven't had quite those temperatures or the same humidity. Well, that didn't last too long, did it? Sitovsky from Ukraine already walking. That's you don't come all this way to only run a mile of the Olympic marathon. That's rather unfortunate for him. His Olympic marathon is over. He's not a bad runner either, Sitovsky, so obviously he came here with an injury, decided to give it a go, and thought better of it after just, what, a few minutes of running.
Well, in a normal course of events, he probably wouldn't even have started, but you've got to do, when you're here for the Olympics, you've got to give it a try, hoping against hope. But unfortunately, his race is completed as we look at a very familiar sight with the two Kenyans, Martin Lel, Sami Wanjiru, close to the front, alongside Henrik Ramala in the yellow hat or bandana from South Africa. And that group already less than a mile completed, and they're already beginning to spread out and open up.
Well, we'll try and give splits and give you an idea of how fast they're running. We're expecting kilometre or 5k splits as normal in these major championships, but I know our American colleagues requested mile splits, and if we are able to receive them, we will do. A little bit more familiar for you, but as Brendan was saying, looks as though they've already got this race going at a fairly early stage, which will be interesting. The likes of Wanjiru and Lel used to having pacemakers around them in big city marathons. Lel was supposed to run the World Champs back in 2005, got injured, didn't appear on the stage there, as it were. Ramala has run plenty of championships as well as big city marathons races very frequently, and he certainly has had some great races, had some others where he has got it horribly wrong on the day. That's Camille Mars, actually. That's another very good athlete who looks to be... Well, is he just deciding, I think they're going off a bit hard, or has he come into this not fit either? He's only run one 20k race this year in Holland. Mars moved, track runner who's moved up to the marathon. Did pretty well when he first moved up to the marathon, but looking as though this Olympic race... he's come perhaps underprepared, and it's already a long way off that lead group, so that's why he was picked out.
We just got information from NBC behind us. We're taking a huge interest in this marathon, the American network, and they've just told us that the first time of the first mile is 4 minutes and 41 seconds, and that's a bit quick. It's a bit too quick. They will have to slow down. But don't look up yet, Steve, because I've got some bad news for you. The marching bands are back in the stadium here, and they're making a racket right in front of us. We're commentating from the stadium where they'll finish, and the entertainment is being laid on for the crowds that have gathered here. So the first opening bit was the marching bands. I'll keep you posted.
Thanks. Actually, if you're sitting in the stadium, you'd think at least they'd put the race up on the big screens, as the Olympic champion Baldini's in a chasing group. He's employing normal tactics even if he was fit, but I think he probably wouldn't want to be going with, as Brendan said, a very quick first miler. So Dan Robinson in that group as well. I can just see Dan tucked in. There he is wearing the sunglasses. Baldini, the defending champion in the all-white of Italy, 2085. And Dan Robinson just behind in that group there. But no, they've got actually pictures of the marching band on the stadium screens. That's Brian Sell of the USA. As Brendan was saying, two very good Americans, and the Americans really have got high hopes. Frank Shorter won the race in 1972. And distance running there really has gone well over the last 2-3 years. They, of course, picked up a medal in the women's 10,000 metres. And indeed, back in Athens 4 years ago, Meb Keflezighi of the USA took the silver medal with a very well-timed run. Of course, Dina Castor took the bronze medal in the women's. Dina Castor, if you were watching last week, you might remember Dina Castor dropping out, and it was indeed a broken bone in her foot. It was eventually diagnosed as around about the 5k point. We saw her just hop up in the air, and she said she'd felt something going. It was indeed a broken bone, so that was a very unusual thing to happen in the middle of a race. She was considered to be a big medal hope for the Americans, and certainly the way that race went, she was supposedly fit and ready for a good race, and the way it went, she may well have had a very good chance. So their hopes will rest on Ryan Hall and Dathan Ritzenheim in this men's race. Well, this is a long straight road which takes them down towards, you might have remembered the map if you were with us right at the start, down towards the Temple of Heaven. which will give them some respite from the sun. They won't be feeling it too much in these early stages, but if this pace is maintained, then certainly the conditions will have a big effect. I'm quite surprised, I'm sure Bren is, and I would imagine quite a few of the athletes out there are surprised that they've gone off at a pretty brisk pace for these first couple of miles. To Almeida, we're just looking at, we'll get a lot of these sort of slow motions, which aren't necessarily meaningful, but they're being run in by the local director. But this pace, there's the Temple of Heaven, you can see in the distance there's a kind of a park area, which as I said will give them some shade. That was Janne Holman from Finland, just saw the back of him, former European champion, won on a rather rainy, wet day in Munich back in 2002. And we'll get our first, we're getting these mile splits, but they'll pass the 5k point in these gardens here. Temple of Heaven, one of the areas which was a lot of parks in Beijing. You might not think it, there are quite a few green areas in the city. And certainly this is perhaps one of the largest, and a favourite place for city dwellers to get some respite from the hustle and bustle and the traffic. Good place to go running and walking.
It's a welcome shade here for these athletes. They'll approach the 5-kilometre point within the Temple of Heaven Park. They're passing the Hall of Prayer for Good Harvests. That's the arch in the background. And when they move further through the park, they'll come towards the altar to heaven. The emperors of the Ming and Qing dynasties used these for annual ceremonies for prayers to heaven for good worship.
Well, it is Sunday. Is it Sunday everywhere now? Certainly here in Beijing. Early in hours back home of Sunday morning.
That was Lee Troop from Australia, the back of the group there, number 1057, just working his way, sitting neatly at the back. And they've all got their watches on. They all know the distances. They won't know the mile splits because they don't have the information. The course isn't marked in miles, but they'll come to the first key marker fairly soon, which is the 5-kilometre point. And at that point they'll know, information will tell them if what we're seeing is to be the case, that they're going a little bit quick.
What would you do in this instance, Bren? If you've come into this, all of your thoughts would have been, okay, you're coming to the Olympics, you know it's Beijing, you know it's going to be hot, a little bit humid, and most championship marathons tend not to go off at the sort of pace they're used to in the city marathons. You're thinking, okay, the first 10 miles or so are going to be fairly comfortable, there's going to be a big group, and then off they go. Somebody like Wanjiru decides, I don't know, it's Olympic Games, he's excited, whatever it is, and the pace is much quicker than you'd expected. Do you sit off? Do you feel as though you have to stay involved? Do you hope that they get it horribly wrong?
We're just looking at Lobopo of Lesotho, who's looks as though he's struggling already. He really is. Jogging here through the park. He's clearly limping. And for him, a 2:13 marathon runner, this is disappointment. He won the Soweto marathon twice before, but no longer here. But if you were in this race, and this is what's happening to you is happening here, first thing you'd be very surprised at how quickly they're going. You would have read the race, and I would have expected that you would have read it in such a way that the first half of the race would be completed in a pretty slow pace, and then the second half would be where all the key decisions were to be made. But already a key decision's got to be made. Do you go with this leading group led by Sami Wanjiru, who's a fantastically talented young athlete? 3 times he's run under an hour for a half marathon. His cadence tells you that he knows exactly what he's doing. He clocked 2 hours 6 minutes in his first ever marathon, his debut in 2007, last December. And there's the 5-kilometre point, 14:52. So is pretty quick. for the opening 5,000 metres.
Well, Bren, that's 2.6 pace, which is I hesitate to say you cannot maintain that sort of pace. You wouldn't think in these conditions and in a championship race. I mean, what's the thinking behind this? Is this just exuberance from Wanjiru?
Well, the only thing we can say for certain about this race is it won't be won in 2.6. So it started at that pace, and it's definitely going to slow. But he's only run a couple of marathons. He was second in London. He ran every inch of the way with Martin Lell, his teammate. He's a fantastic half marathon runner, and he's setting a pace here which the big decisions are being made. And there's the Olympic champion coming through off the pace, running in the style and the manner which he's expected to do. We always run like that. Dan Robinson's just gone through the shot. He's with that second group, and I bet they're all amazed that A, the time is going as quickly as it is, but secondly that they're actually having to make crucial decisions in the marathon within the first 5 kilometers. The big decisions in the marathon usually made later. Looking at the feed stations, we were a bit disappointed with them last week because they're not as well organised as they should be, and I don't think they're as well organised today as they should be. The athletes are looking for their bottles. I can see Henrik Ramala walking down the line looking for his own drink. In conditions like these, you need your own drinks, you need the hydration. A couple of athletes have picked up bottles and put them down, and obviously not their own. So I'm a little bit disappointed. These games have been brilliantly organised. We did refer last week to the women's marathon about the jostling that was going on because these feed stations are so close together, and to me that is disappointment that they haven't improved it over last week.
Well, now they exit the gardens of the Temple of Heaven. You just saw the altar to heaven there, and there it is. And the amount of history, and you don't need me to give you a history lesson, I'm sure, of Chinese dynasties, but it's been a favourite place for Ming emperors and during the Qing dynasty as well. And it's good that some of these areas have been maintained in a city which has just grown and grown, and at times, to be honest, has not always looked after some of its heritage and history in terms of buildings. But the Forbidden City is a formidable place to visit. We'll be obviously heading back in that direction. Once they turn here, they took that right turn, they'll take another right turn in about a mile or so and head back towards Tiananmen Square where they've just come from. But this is, well, a very interesting start to this men's marathon, and I'm looking down the list of people behind, the likes of Röthlin of Switzerland and Harib, Gumri. They're all just kind of wondering what to do. You can tell they're kind of 8, 9, 10 seconds off this pace, wondering whether to stay in contact, whether to just really sit back and watch what happens here. That's Harib there, 2:3.91, the man who won back-to-back world championships in much different conditions to these which we're experiencing this morning. Temperature rising all of the time. It's already approaching 25 centigrade, and it's only 10 to 8.
The athletes now running along Yongdingmen Street. That was the former front gate of the outer section of Beijing's old city wall, originally built in 1553. They're carrying along then onto Tiananmen Avenue. And I'm sure these athletes are surprised. We're certainly surprised. Operating already close to 2 hours and 6 minutes. And if you were going to predict the time based on the women's performance, you'll be looking closer to 2:12 than you would be to 2:06. And at the moment, the 2:06 pace continues. And Sami Wanjiru of Kenya, he's only 21 years of age. His coach was second in the Olympic marathon in 1992. Koichi Morishita of Japan. He knows all there is to know about marathon running, but I'm not sure he'd have briefed his athlete to go that quickly.
Well, whatever his thoughts were beforehand, he and his coach, whatever they decided, he's obviously gone with this policy of trying to run away from the field and trusting in his ability to maintain a good pace right throughout this marathon in these conditions. And that's going to give us a very dramatic race, I'm pretty sure. Not very dissimilar, very different to the women's race. Had that big group. Constantina Dita then took off about halfway. The big names all sort of sat and watched and wondered whether she'd gone too early, whether she would come back to them. She didn't. She just kept going away, and when they tried to chase her down, it was far too late. Yongding Mengate Tower. It's a replica of the old tower, one of the towers around the city walls that Brendan was just mentioning a little earlier on. And they have now taken that right turn heading back towards Tiananmen Square, which will signal, well, just before they get into the square, will hit the 10k point. And if anything, you know, they might have gone even quicker through the second 5k here, because Wanjiru really is turning on the pressure at this very early stage. It's rather unusual to see. Merge, you can see, for Ethiopia in that group. I mentioned Harry before, Lel. But there've got to be other athletes who are sitting back, Bren, who are going to have a say later on. Somebody's got to be, obviously, the ones who are adopting different tactics. I just get the feeling that somebody who's running a little smarter, if you like, and running the type of race you might have expected more. Maybe one of the Americans, maybe the likes of Rutlin. Just not getting too involved with what Wanjiru is trying to do.
Norman Lomo of South Africa finds the place hot. Now, if you look at the organisation of the course there, you can see there are barriers on the road, and then there's a sterile area, a gap, and the crowds are behind the second barrier, keeping them well away from the course. And this allows well, it actually stops the supporters from getting really close to the marathon runners. And this has been set up because of the incident we saw in the Athens Olympic Games, when a spectator rushed from the side and actually interfered with the Brazilian athlete in the race. Now here they are, another feed station. This is just plain water, and you can see they're all pretty keen to take a drink of water. Martin Lel passing a water bottle across to his teammate Sami Wanjiru, and after 22 minutes of running, they look to me as though they were desperate to get the water on board. As they're approaching the center of Beijing, approaching Tiananmen Square again, in that group, in the sunglasses and the white vest, that's Chema Martinez, the former European 10,000 meter champion. I'm amazed to see him running at this pace. He's a very accomplished athlete. He knows exactly about pace judgment, and there is absolutely no way that the Spanish marathon coach has told Chema Martinez to set off at this pace. This is far too quick. It'll slow down. It has to slow down. And if it doesn't slow down, then we're going to see the most amazing marathon in history. I think we'll see a pretty exceptional marathon, but I don't think we'll see the most amazing marathon in history. Wanjiru checking his watch there, but when I look at it, he's checking his watch. There is no reference point. So looking at your watch just to see what... Oh, there, he's just checked it there through the 8-kilometer point. So at least he's actually taking note of where he is and what time he's running. The 10-kilometer point, the next check. And that's important for these athletes. It's obviously important for the commentators and the spectators, but it's most important for these athletes, because you've got a group now running this marathon down towards the size of the group that you would expect in the late stages. Martinez running over there trying to get that shower. You can see the shower in the background, cooling these athletes down. Well, they certainly need that.
Brad, I'm hardly believing, if that was the 8k point, which is 5 miles, they were around about 23:40 or something. They're running at kind of 2:05 pace now. They've actually got a bit quicker. You know, we saw them through the first 5k, and you've got to be right. They've got to be athletes, even the good athletes who are in that group. There's Victor Rutlin now. He played a canny game last year at the World Championships in hot conditions in Osaka. The Swiss athlete who's come apparently here very fit, so we're told, but he must be wondering what on earth is going on here, because the pace that's being set, there are guys in that group, as good as they are, who are running kind of personal best pace, and that's got to be something which cannot be the right tactics, you would assume. So, nonetheless, it's giving us a wonderful racing prospect. Sami Wanjiru, Martin Lell, Martinez, Brendan mentioned, right at the back of the group. Kharib, world champion, former double world champion, just putting his hand up there for some reason, and the Moroccan in the red vest and green shorts at the back of the group just drifted over to the side for a second. Merga in the green of Ethiopia also there. Asmaron from Eritrea. Well, it's an interesting lead group. 2 or 3 of the pre-race favourites, all 3 of the Kenyans there. That's at a pace which I don't think anybody would have predicted in these early stages.
Steve, I've just had a bit more information, and we're assuming it's correct from NBC, but the last mile there, 4 minutes and 32 seconds, which is absolutely staggering. This is incredible pace in this marathon. They're running at a pace which is world record pace. It's actually under 2 hours 4.5 minutes. The world record held by Haile Gebrselassie. Nobody ever thought that anybody's going to be interested in that. The world record, 2 hours 4 minutes and 26 seconds by Haile Gebrselassie, and here they are approaching the 10-kilometer point at world record pace in temperatures of 25 degrees and rising in the Olympic marathon, which is already getting competitive in these so early stages. And unless Sami Wanjiru is the greatest runner the world's ever seen, then I think he is running at a pace which nobody is going to maintain, let alone him.
Well, this area they're just running through now, you can probably see a lot of new buildings there. It's been pedestrianised as well. This was one of the areas which was known for the old hutongs, the tightly packed together little streets. They've all been demolished, unfortunately, and a lot of new buildings put up in place. But it's the pace here which has taken us all by surprise. As Brent said, it's just getting quicker. It has got quicker over the last couple of miles, and operating at a pace which surely they can't maintain. Athletes are having to make really tough decisions. But to be honest, I think the good athletes who are just sitting off this a little bit and trying to run more normal pace may well benefit in the latter stages. We'll see. It's tough when you see the big names, the favourites out there running like that, because naturally you'd think, okay, they can't all have got this wrong. If 1 or 2 go off at the front, then yes, you can think, okay, there's comfort in numbers. There's Dan Robinson of Great Britain, and you know that Dan will run a canny race here and will pick people off as this race develops, those who have overcooked it in the early stages, and he'll just make his way through the field. He'll have his race plan worked out beforehand, what he wants to go through, 10k, etc., and we'll stick to that. There's Baldini, the leading that particular group in the sunglasses and the white of Italy, the defending champion. All the problems he's had, we've mentioned, stress fracture coming into this race. And then we'll go further up as we get closer and closer towards that lead group, but they're completely strung out. This is not what we were expecting. A couple of the Japanese athletes as well. And these are good athletes who are now finding themselves a long way behind the lead group. And this is Martinez even going up the front as fast as they're running, and he's wanting to move on. It may well be just at a feed station there that he got a few yards as they come into the south end of Tiananmen Square, back where they started just about half an hour ago. And we're going to be approaching the 10-kilometer point very soon, if indeed it must be very soon, to be honest, given the pace that they were running. I think it's just about round this corner. There you go, it's 10-kilometer point is coming up on the caption. Get the clock stopped. Well, that is 29.25. That is, as you said, Brendan, that's pretty much operating at just about world record pace. There's not many British runners can run 10 kilometres at that pace on the track anymore.
Well, I've seen this season, this summer, I saw Martinez running the Great Manchester Run, and I saw him running London in the London 10,000, and he didn't run much faster in those races than he's running here today. And he's such an experienced runner. He's 36 years of age. He's been European 10,000 metre champion. And I'm absolutely amazed that he's decided he wants to be running competitively with these athletes at this point in the race. He must be running incredibly well, or he must have lost bearings in terms of his times. But this is absolutely incredible what's happening here. These athletes in the Olympic Games running 2 hours 6 pace for the first 10 kilometers of the marathon. And you know, when all the managers and the coaches have sat down with these athletes, and you know, because of the discussions we've had during the week, they've been talking about settle down for the first half, get it all together, and then make your moves in the second half. Nobody expected anything like this, and this has actually taken them all by surprise. And then you get into an area where you're not confident about your decision making, you're feeling a little bit more tired than you expect to, because the pace is going a bit faster. And there they are, you're looking overhead into Tiananmen Square. They'll approach Tiananmen Square on the other side now, and then exit Tiananmen Square out for the journey. Just over 10 kilometers gone in the men's marathon, and this historic site is witnessing an incredible marathon so far.
Well, I know it's 1 o'clock in the morning back home, but with just about a quarter of this marathon gone, I can guarantee you that we're in for an extremely interesting race. Cannot believe the pace that's being set here. And if you are a fan of marathon running, if you've done one yourself, or maybe a half marathon or something, it's really hard for you can probably, I hope, get the surprise that Brendan and I are experiencing here at what we're watching. There's the entrance to the Forbidden City, and that's all of the sites that we take time out to look at and explain. Completely lost on the athletes, of course. And all they're concentrating on is that blue line ahead of them, and you would have thought they would have been given some thought to how fast they're running as well, watching their splits, but they just seem to be running freely. Fountains operating well. You wouldn't have minded running through one or two of those this morning, I feel sure. But the Forbidden City, as I said, one of the big, obviously, sites that visitors to Beijing, and well, I would say you'd have to put it at the top of your list. Since the 1400s, it's been the Imperial Palace of China. Kublai Khan was the first emperor, eventually, of course, coming descendant of Genghis Khan, settled in this area, and eventually, following on from him, Beijing was made the capital, and the Imperial Palace set down there. And that's 8,000 buildings, or sorry, 980 buildings with 8,000 bays, if you like, but it's a real intricate network of history as well as architecture. I don't think you've been, have you, Brent? Be honest.
I have been.
Have you? Good.
I've been into my tourist mode.
Good.
We stopped by the Great Hall of the People, which is just in the background there, which is the centre for the Communist Party and the Chinese Parliament. And we're quickly passing the new revolutionary structure there. That's the Egg, the National Centre for the Performing Arts, the Grand Theatre. It's known as the Egg. I'm sure that's got something to do with why this is known as the Bird's Nest.
I see what you did there. Just for information, Dan Robinson, fans and friends, he's in 76th position, 2.5 minutes behind the leaders, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's exactly where he should be, to be honest, time-wise, as Martinez already starting to feel the pace, and that's his race is going to be over sooner than he would have expected, because to run the first 10k like that, there's only one thing that's going to happen. You're going to slow down, and you may slow down pretty quickly. Dan Robinson, as I said, in 76th place, and the one thing you can say for sure, he'll finish higher than that. He'll keep moving through the field, he'll pick people off, and well, we'll keep you as posted as much as we can, and hopefully we'll get some pictures of Dan. We'll keep our eyes open as much as we possibly can to see his progression. This is Ryan Hall, I mentioned the Americans and their high expectations, and Ryan Hall himself would not have expected this. He has run 2.6. Brilliant run in London, finished 5th there. And he is going down the list, sitting a fair way back. He was in 26th position at 10k, and time-wise was 26 seconds, but even he went through in 30 minutes and 11 through 10k, and that for him wouldn't have been too far off PB. Well, it's about sort of 2.7, 2.8 pace. So Ryan Hall, even he's gone off quicker than he would have expected, and he finds himself 30 minutes, 30 seconds behind the leaders. So I'm sorry if we keep labouring this, but we just really do need to make the point about the sort of pace that's being set here, because it is going to set us up for a very, very interesting second half of the race. And it's really about watching, and we'll do our best to watch for athletes coming from behind who have not gone with this early pace, as well as obviously keeping an eye on what's happening at the front and how they move through these next few kilometres, if they slow down, or at what point they start to slow down, because they will have to, that's for sure.
We're watching Gemma Martinez, former European champion, who did go with that leading group. That leading group, Martin Lell, Luke Kibet, the world champion, Sami Wanjiru of Kenya, Harib of Morocco, just the back of the group in the green vest. And those 7 athletes, Eritrean athlete on the far side, that's Asmaron. And there the shot from behind, and very quickly you can see Goumri of Morocco moving up to the group as Chema Martinez of Spain drifts off the group, and he's going to have a long day ahead of him. His experience should have told him better. He shouldn't have been there. He shouldn't have been running at that pace for the first 10,000 meters. He shouldn't have been running 29.25 for 10k, and he's going to suffer, and he's going to pay the price of that bad judgment. And you can see them all, they're grabbing all the water that is available. They're looking around, see what's happening in the group. The other Moroccan, Goumri, has joined the group, and you sense now for the first time that Sami Wanjiru has done his little bit, and they're slowing down. They're almost slowing down to a jog now. So they run 10 kilometers quick, and now they're planning to settle down together. As we look at Kifle, the other Eritrean athlete, the two of them together, Asmaron and Kifle. There's Harib, twice world champion at this event, the strong man of the marathon, number 2391. As we look there at Sami Wanjiru dropping off the back of the group, and this is giving the opportunity for Chema Martinez to take a little bit closer order, but that's purely because that world record pace for the 10 kilometers is quite a silly way to run a marathon, is to open them dead quick and then slow down. You're better off to move through steadily and then get quicker. But what's happened now is everyone's been taken by surprise, and the group, because of the pace slowing, is being joined by extra athletes.
The only thing you can put it down to is the fact that particularly Wanjiru has not run too many marathons. He certainly hasn't run a championship marathon. It's the Olympic Games. Well, you know, he should know though. He's run plenty of road races. Although he's only 21, he's run very good, very quick half marathons. But his natural running pace is normally races at that fast pace, and maybe just can't help himself. That's what he normally races at, and hasn't really thought about what this race requires.
His natural pace is under an hour for a half marathon. So yes, maybe when he ran in Fukuoka and he won that race, and in London, maybe he settled down on those occasions. But I don't understand what that was all about, and Martinez will be a little bit relieved there. So they've slowed down sufficiently for him to get back in contention, because he was heading for a lonely road. Now at least he's there with some safety in numbers.
Well, get the hot chocolate going, or whatever keeps you awake in these wee small hours, because this race is just going to get more and more interesting.
I thought you were talking to me there, saying getting the hot chocolate out ready.
Well, I know you always have a hot chocolate ready, don't you? Actually, where we're sitting, not the best thing at this time in the morning, and the sun's glaring down here in the stadium, and there's not much respite from it out there on the roads either, to be honest. There's not much shade at any point now, either from buildings or from trees. And they're going to be getting the heat back from the road as well, and the tarmac. And it will just get hotter and hotter. The women's race actually didn't do too bad weather-wise. It was one of the better days. It was certainly warmer than most of the athletes would be used to, but it didn't get silly hot. And today, certainly going to be a few degrees high. I'm not sure it'll get as warm as yesterday. We had thunderstorms during the night, broke the weather a little. I hesitate to tell you what's going on in the stadium. That's Dos Santos, former New York Marathon winner. Well, I'm sorry if you've been experiencing some problems with the pictures. Had some breakup. Apologise about that. We'll do our best to rectify the problems, but hopefully it won't spoil your enjoyment through 14 kilometres. And we'll be very interested to see the next split at 15k, just to see how much they have slowed down. I think they obviously have, but that group still a long way ahead. That's Asfar from Ethiopia.
We just got a split time there for the last mile, the 8th mile. That was 4 minutes and 54 seconds, so they slowed down quite considerably in the last 2 miles, which is what they've got to do. They just had to do that. There was no alternative. The 3 Kenyans are still in that group. The 2 Eritreans, Asmaron and Kifle, are still there. The white vest of Spain, Martinez, has joined back with the group. Goumri and Harib of Morocco are in that group. And the slow motion camera shows the pounding of the athletes suffer over the 26 miles, 385 yards through the streets of Beijing.
Well, these little graphics give you an idea of, well, the chasing group that's in Asfar. I'm not sure he's chasing, but anyway, he's 13 seconds behind, but the athletes are all strung out a long way down that road behind this lead group, which has just come back together again as the pace has slowed, approaching the 15-kilometre point, which is just a few hundred metres away. And the first 5k was 14:53, the second was 14:32, very quick indeed. And this, you would imagine, is going to be back towards 15-minute pace on the basis of what we've been watching. But the crowd's certainly gathering, which is good to see. The last chance for the people of Beijing, and of course all of the people have come from all over the world. I suspect a few of them have probably not been back home to their hotel rooms. There's a lot of partying going on in Beijing last night, and probably is wondering why some of the roads are closed and perhaps haven't been able to get back. And thought, well, I might as well sit and watch this.
In this area, the financial area of Beijing, Beijing now an international centre for business and finance. And Beijing Finance Street, a huge block of all the international companies, all the finance houses, the major growing city, Beijing financial area.
Right, here we go then, 15k coming up. We're still going to be inside 45 minutes. It's just to let you, around 45 minutes is about 2 hours, 6.5 minute pace. Now there's the 15k point, so 44.38. That suggests that they're still operating, well, they're operating inside 2.6 pace. And I'll do some maths, he says. And what do I make that? That's 15.11 for that 5k, Brent. Is that my maths right?
think that's around about right, Steve, but the thing about it, that's the slowest 5-kilometre split of the race, and it had to be that. It just had to do that. It just had to slow down. They're still, overall, on the first 15k, they're running at 2 hours 6 pace, but they were operating at 2 hours 4 pace, world record pace for the marathon, which I've got to say, a little bit foolish, and I think things are going to change so dramatically in the late stages, and once again, sensing the pace is lifted as we look at Martinez of Spain just drifting off that group. And then you look at the feed station arrangement. Well, when they're spread out, they've got a little bit more chance, but it's not the most efficient that I've seen. It's a bit of a shame because it's crucial to these athletes, and I noticed the Spanish team manager was there ready to give Chema Martinez his own drink, because at the previous feed station he looked along the line, he couldn't actually find his own drink, and the arrangements that are required to make this work in a precision-like manner certainly need to be improved. But it's too late for today as we look at the White Pagoda Temple overhead there, which was built in the 8th year of the Zhejiang reign, 1271 AD, according to this information we've got from our 2 university students from Leeds University who helped us round, showed us around the course and gave us some tremendous insights and background into what was going to be seen on the route of the marathon.
But Bren, the 9th mile was actually running 5 minutes, which is the slowest of the race, so they're continuing to slow. Maybe Martinez just before that feed station just dropped off, got himself back involved, but here we go again. And he knows he's slowed Sammy Wanjiru, so it's not him getting it wrong. He does not want the pace to drop. That's silly, though. That is just silly. I mean, if you want to move the pace, you don't sprint away like this at this stage of the race. I just don't understand. I know, as I said, I know he's young, but this is just not necessary at all at this stage of the race to put in a burst such as that.
What's a little bit more surprising to me about this is that Martin Lell, who is recognized as one of the top marathon runners in the world, he's won the London Marathon last 2 years, or 3 out of the last 4 years, number 2261. Every time we see Martin Lell, we see him win. He won last year's Great North Run in magnificent manner, out-sprinting Sammy Wanjiru in that race. So they were 1 and 2 in the London Marathon, in the Great North Run last year. But I'm surprised that he's responding to the impetuous tactics of his teammate Sammy Wanjiru. I would have thought that Martin Lell would have just settled and allowed Sammy Wanjiru to do whatever he wanted to do. He's clearly keen to get on with the race. They're not even at the halfway point yet. And look at that gap to Martinez. It's very, very quickly opened once again. Martinez got back in contention, and then suddenly the gap opened again. And I'm just looking down the road from Martinez. I can see Goumri, the other Moroccan athlete, just drifted off the back, as well as one of the Ethiopians, and I can't quite see if that's number 1651. That's Kabidi of Ethiopia, and just ahead of him, number 2394, the Moroccan. So the original leading group that these athletes caught when they slowed down is back to where it was before. Harib, the tall figure, the athlete who won the World Championships in these sort of conditions on a couple of occasions. He looks strong and he looks proud in the back of that group. The 2 Eritreans are still there, Asmaron and Kifle, and the 3 Kenyans, Wanjiru, Lell.
Luke Kibet, the world champion, the other of the Kenyans, just on the side of the group there, 2-2. The back of the group, sorry, 2271, 61 is Lell, of course. Just looking further back, Bren, as you were talking there, I was looking further back down the list of people going through 15k on the computer. Baldini is almost 3 minutes behind these runners. Now, okay, we accept that he's been injured. Dan Robinson, 3.5 minutes, 3:37 in 68th place now. He's already picked up 8 places from the last split of 10k, and he'll continue to do that. But I just can't get my head around this. I can only assume that Wanjiru must have come here thinking, I think I can run 2.5, 2.6, and that's the pace I'm going to run. He set off at that pace. When the pace slowed a little bit, he realised it at the 15k point, perhaps once he got his head around what pace we're going. went off again with a to be honest, as you said, the right word was impetuous stretch. Went off. The groups got back together a little bit again, but there's no real let-up. It's obviously a tactic which is preordained or pre-planned, and he's not letting up on it. But those, as you said, who've made the commitment to go with him, and they're very experienced athletes, are either going to be rewarded with obviously medals at the end and haven't got it right, or with at the end of this, if they do get it wrong, they think, what on earth did we do that for? But Goumri, just what, he must be 30, 40, 50 metres perhaps off that lead group. Now he's a very experienced athlete, and he would normally want to be in that group. Can't keep pace with this, or doesn't want to keep pace with this at this particular point. Wanjiru 2.263, Martin Lell 2.261, Luc Kebet's in there just behind them. We've got the two Eritreans, Kifle, Asmaron, Kebede. There's a little bit further back, that's Merga, the Ethiopian, is there. Now, that group's just breaking up again. They're certainly not hanging back, are they? And water being taken by Merga, the Ethiopian. All of them should take, and the hand going out there from Wanjiru. He's just grabbed a bottle there. I was wondering if he was going to leave it too late, but you can see there how stretched out they are. This pace has got to continue to take its toll. The next split will of course be at 20k. You're approaching halfway then, and we're still operating and not far off world record pace, and in these conditions that is remarkable.
It is remarkable, but you can see the temperature's climbing now. It looks like 27 degrees. The humidity isn't too bad, but the point of the matter is it's getting hotter and hotter, and as they're running at this sort of pace, you just know that out of this group, there's 5 now down. It looks like Luc Kebet, the other Kenyan athlete, the athlete who won the World Championships. He actually came in here as the third string. He won the World Championships in Osaka last year. That was hot, and he ran that race in a slightly different manner. He ran it faster in the second part of the race. And Harib, the twice world champion, he's coming under pressure too. And this is an incredible piece of distance running, and I can't believe that it's altogether sensible and serious, because I don't think this is the way to run a marathon. And if we talked to Haile Gebrselassie earlier in the week, he said that Martin Lell was the man to win this marathon. And when he talked about why he wasn't going to run it, he said it was too hot. And if you run hard marathons in hot conditions, then they play havoc with your central nervous system and can actually start causing some serious problems. And Haile Gebrselassie says, I want to run the rest of my career, I want to run another 4 years, I want to run the marathon in London, and I don't think the best way for me to do that is to run like this in these conditions. But I just think if Haile Gebrselassie was in this race, the world record holder for the marathon, I wonder whether he would have bothered to go with this pace, or he might have had the confidence, because you need confidence to sit off this. And there's a group of 5 there now. The other Kenyan, Luc Kebet, has dropped away, and I just wonder, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if the 3 medalists didn't come from this group.
Spray shower, the athletes going through. Bren, the previous mile was we said was 5 minutes. Well, the mile they went through after that was 4:44. And if you want to increase the pace, you don't do it by going from a 5-minute mile to a 4:44. You can do it if it's been slow all the way, but when the pace is fast, it's just not the right way to run. It's taking its toll on the world champion, Luc Kebet. And I think you're right, we're going to see others come off that group, and somebody, you would assume somebody from further back will have got their tactics a little better. And unless 2 or 3 of these men can keep running at this sort of pace the whole way, which, you know, there would be hats off to them if they can. That would be astounding, given that, as Brent said, the temperature's rising. I'm not going to predict the weather, but if it continues rising the way it is, it's probably going to be getting close to 30 degrees by the time they finish. Go on, now you're going to say.
Go on, predict the weather. You've been doing it all week. You got it right one day. I'm sure you got it right 1 out of the 10 days. Go and predict it again. Go on.
I've done all right. Okay. It'll be hot when they finish. There you go. They're flying along. if you're a bit of a keen runner, you might never have actually got to run. I certainly couldn't run a 5-minute mile anymore for 1 mile, never mind anything else. But these guys clipping along inside 5-minute mile pace, well inside 5-minute mile pace for some of these miles they've been running. But it's the pace going up and down. Look at Merger, he's kind of looking across at the Kenyans as if to say, okay, I'm enjoying this, come on, let's keep it going. Karib, the Moroccan in the green shorts. Kifle, the only Eritrean left in that group now. Kifle was 7th in London this year. Ran 2:7:34 in his marathon debut, which is still his personal best. Took a medal in the World in the World Championships of this event in 2005 in Helsinki, when, if I remember rightly, it was raining and wet. Very different to today. Well, they're heading towards the 20k point, and as I said before, you saw that caption there, or the graphic, that halfway, not long after that. Now look at this. Kifle and Merger are pushing on, and Wanjiru just drifting, 2:2:63, just drifting to the back of this group now. There's Luc Kebet, the world champion. He's already looking at his watch and wondering, I'm sure, thinking, what on earth have I done here? Well, the one thing's for sure, there's going to be people coming from further back. We'll be starting to put pressure on some of these athletes. There's a long, long way. We're more than halfway. More than half of this marathon still to run. Lots that's going to happen in certainly in the last few miles, but probably in the next few miles, to be honest. Julio Ray of Spain, I could see the back of that group. We've seen this man on a couple of occasions. Dos Santos of Brazil, as we move further up towards the leaders. I was looking for how well the Americans were going, with Ryan Hall was almost a minute behind the lead group. But that was Dathan Ritzenheim we saw. So I'm trying to work out exactly how far back we have gone. Victor Rutlin, I was watching for him as well. Ritzenheim in about 17th place at the moment. With those positions changing all of the time. Gumri, in fact Ritzenheim has moved well through the field, because these are the guys who were just off that lead group not so long ago. So Ritzenheim of the USA certainly making progress even since the 15k point. He's picked up 2 or 3 places and must be approaching the top 10 here now. That's Gumri, as I said, who last we had was in 9th position and looks as though he's suffering. And Gumri is such a good runner. He went with that pace and is struggling. Asmaron, also the Eritrean in the blue vest, and Kabidi of Ethiopia. And then we start to move towards Luc Kebet and then the lead group.
Looking for Chema Martinez, who featured so largely in the opening bit. I haven't seen him now on that run through the field, so he's probably, well, we've got no information about it yet, but we're not sure he's still competing as we watch Luc Kebet, the world champion, just on his own, looking for the shade there. They're looking for any respite from the temperature, and also he's found a little bit of respite from the pace. He's just off the pace, but he looks powerful, he looks strong, and he's still in contention. He could feature in the late stages of this event, because that group of 5 athletes were looking overhead, and I noticed a long look over his shoulder as they approached 20 kilometers, just over 59 minutes, and that is still close to 2 hours 6 pace. If they run under an hour for the first 20k, that's 2 hours 6 pace.
So somewhere around 2:05 still, and I know we've mentioned it before, but let's just remind you, the world record is 2 hours 4 and 26. Now there's no way that you would come to the Olympic Games in hot conditions and attempt to go out at world record pace. That's what these men are doing, and they'll find out, we'll find out whether that's a wise tactic or not. 59.10, Brent, so that was another fast 5k mark. We went through 14:53, 14:32 were the first 5k, the second 5k. Then we had a 15:11, and then this time 14:34. That is just, well, as I said, I don't quite get what the plan here is. Is it just to run the legs off everybody and it's last man standing? That's got to be what it is, because that's what you're doing.
That's exactly what it is. And unless these guys are rewriting the rules of distance running, look at they're lining up now as they approach the halfway point, collecting their own personally labelled bottles. There's Martin Lell just grabbing for his. He looks as though he desperately wants it and desperately needs it. He carry it for a little while and then discard it. But Kifle of Eritrea, Murga of Ethiopia, Lel and Wanjiru of Kenya, and the former world champion Harib of Morocco. So they've taken water, they've taken their own drinks, they're now taking water. And look at the time on the way here now, 61 minutes on the clock as they approach the halfway point. There's Luke Kebet, the world champion. He wants a drink, he wants some shade, and he's still